Good evening. Thank you for joining us on the War Diary. On the 372nd day of the war, here are the main highlights of the day at 7 p.m. Beirut time. We begin with the situation in Lebanon. While Beirut's southern suburbs remained precariously calm on Saturday, South Lebanon and the Bekaa were the scene of violent Israeli attacks, resulting in several deaths and injuries. In South Lebanon, 2 Lebanese army soldiers were killed and 3 wounded in an Israeli strike on Kafra and Bint Jubail. In Baysariya, in the Saida district, a Lebanese soldier and his 2 children were killed in an Israeli strike. Also in Baysariya, a mosque and a house were targeted. The latest report puts the death toll at 5 killed. The village of Ait al-Shab was particularly hard hit, with Israeli warplanes launching more than 15 raids targeting its residential areas. Israel called on residents of southern Lebanon on Saturday not to return until further notice. An Israeli strike on the village of Barja in the Shuf region killed 4 people and wounded 14. The village of Maisra and Kisrwain was once again the target of Israeli raids. This time, the house of Abdullah Amro was targeted. According to a preliminary report, 1 person was killed and 9 others were wounded. In the afternoon, an Israeli airstrike was reported on the town of Deir Bala in the Batroun district in northern Lebanon. In the Bekaa, the villages of Nabishit, Sara'in, and Riya and Zahle were targeted by raids. For its part, Hezbollah announced that it had fired against an Israeli infantry force in Khirbet Zarit and against an explosives factory in base 7200 south of Haifa. As an Israeli military bulldozer attempted to leave the vicinity of the Ramya site in the direction of the village, Hezbollah fighters targeted it with a guided missile. At the Jarda site and in Ma'aliya, gatherings of Israeli soldiers were targeted by a salvo of rockets, which were also fired at the Suma base in the occupied Syrian Golan. The Ministry of Health stated that from September 23 to October 11, 2024, General Security recorded the entry of 317,457 Syrian citizens and 115,044 Lebanese citizens into Syrian territory. The human toll at 7 p.m. Beirut time is as follows. The Lebanese Ministry of Health reported on Saturday that 2,255 people had been killed and 10,524 wounded through Israeli strikes since the start of the war on Lebanon. Friday's toll stood at 26 killed and 144 wounded. In Gaza, the Ministry of Health has recorded 42,175 Palestinians killed and 95,921 wounded. The United States announced on Friday a series of sanctions targeting the Iranian petrochemical industry in response to the October 1 attack on Israel. On the diplomatic front, US President Joe Biden called on Israel to stop firing on UN forces in Lebanon, while his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron called it unacceptable for them to be targeted deliberately by Israeli forces. UNIFIL spokesperson Andrea Tenenti told AFP that the peacekeepers had refused to leave their positions in southern Lebanon as Israel had demanded. The Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, reiterated Tehran's support for Lebanon on Saturday. During a tour of Beirut, he said, "The government's priorities at this stage are to work to achieve a ceasefire, put an end to Israeli aggression, and preserve Lebanon's security and that of its people." Pope Francis called for an immediate ceasefire on all fronts of war in the Middle East, including Lebanon. He invited everyone to pray for the Lebanese, in particular for the inhabitants of South Lebanon, who have been forced to leave their towns and villages, expressing the hope that they will soon be able to return and live there in peace. And that's it for today's recap. See you tomorrow for another roundup of the situation. Until then, stay connected on our website, www.thisisbeirut.com.lb, and on all our social media platforms.